giant welcome, both here in the room and also on Slack. Come on up, please, Emily. It's Emily Cressey, everyone. Go this way.
Is this on? Oh, it's on. Oh, okay. Josh, does this clicker work by any chance? Let me see. No. Okay, I'm going to stand here. Hello, everyone. I am so incredibly excited to be here, especially opening this event today. And hello to everyone on the live stream. And, you know, as Phil said, I've come up from London, back in Leeds. So I'm so incredibly excited to meet you all today. And I'm going to be talking about design systems with this very, very dramatic title of the monster we created. And generally design systems, you know, there is so many opinions. It's a huge subject. But I want to share today just the journey of where we came from with design systems, where we are now, and where we're heading in the future. So I'm going to share a few of my favorite ideas of how I deal with design systems, especially working on them at Sketch. I get to see them for what they are at their complete origin. And I really like being honest, open, and candid about design systems because I feel that's the best way for us all to connect with the monster that we actually have created. So in the spirit of sharing, I'd like to start by being very open. So, hey everyone, I'm Emily. Like I said, nice to meet you. And like I said, I've come from south and up to the north, and it's so nice to be back in Leeds, I can't tell you. I was on the train and just hearing northern voices, it was just a breath of fresh air. I think my bowels started to just completely eradicate. It's like every stop coming up here. So like Phil said, I'm from Hull, and yeah, I live in London now. But at my uni days when I was back in Leeds, I frequented a place that many of you might know, called the Cockpit. So when we're being honest and open, I literally spent a lot of time here, and it's a grimy emo club for no one that knows what that is, just outside of Leeds. And yeah, I spent a lot of time there. So it probably wouldn't surprise you that I absolutely adore emo music. Maybe so that I am pretty obsessed with Taylor Swift. And I love my cats, Pom and Poco. And I'm not going to lie, I just wanted them up there for you to see. So yeah. And another weird fact, I promise I'm getting to things, don't I, is that I really love sour beer. And how this leads on this, that my first sour beer I actually had 2014 back at Haystack, my first Haystack event, way back then. And I actually met my partner at a Haystack event. Little did Josh know that he was like cultivating the perfect environment for designers to come together and start dating. But as you can tell, Haystack is completely close to my heart. And it's an honor to be here and be back on the stage. I was actually on the stage back in 2017. So yeah, it's good to be back. And I love being on stage, as terrifying as it absolutely is, because I just love sharing. And I love being open. I love being candid and honest and sharing everything and experience, you know, that we have in our day-to-day lives in tech. Because I feel that everyone in this room has something they need to share. And whether that's an experience, little tidbit of information. You know, we get so caught up in our bubbles these days that, you know, seeing someone else share their opinions, it's actually quite refreshing. So I use speaking as kind of like a group therapy, speaking to you, and hopefully you can get something back from me. But I feel like it brings everyone together. And I think to understand design systems, we have to really come together and talk honestly about them, because we've come on a journey so far. So I'd like you all to join me as we travel back in time and exactly to understand where we are with design systems. You know, there's a lot of talk, you know, are design systems needed? Have they got a bit out of hand? But join me on this journey and we'll go back in time and see, you know, how they came to be and where they're heading. So I work at Sketch. If any of you have no idea what Sketch is, it's a design platform, design tool. If you haven't checked us out in about 3 years or so, you know, please do. We're pushing new things all the time, and it might have changed from the last time you designed with us. And I work on the design systems team, and it's really cool because I get to see like I said, design systems from the core origin and how they begin. So when I say I work on the design systems team, I work with stuff like symbols, layer styles, text styles, essentially anything a designer or a team need to create and maintain a design system. And my usual day-to-day designing Sketch, if you're wondering, it looks something like this. Try and hand that off to developers when you have like a selection button, they try clicking to export that. It's wild. But as you can see, designing design systems for designers in a design tool, it comes with so many new and interesting challenges every day. And I feel like I've gone full circle with Sketch. I used to use Sketch about 10 years ago, and now I get to change it, and it's incredible, and change it for the better. So when I talk about design systems, I want to get us all on the same page to begin with, because there's so many buzzwords out there. Design systems have become this big thing that we all talk about. But I really want us to get on the same page to start of, what precisely is a design system? And I think it's this, and it's one of my favorite definitions of a design system, is a set of principles that underlies a shared standard of design. Because I think when we get deep down in the weeds of a design system, we kind of forget this bigger picture of what it's actually used for and what we're aiming to achieve actually by having one. So like I say, I want to take us on a journey. So I'm going to step back about a decade ago. And if you cast your mind back, can we remember Tumblr? And I did this, I don't know why. We really loved to put mustaches on our fingers. And yeah, it was a wild ride. But Facebook was big back then, if you can remember. But at this time, there really wasn't a concept of design systems. We were really too preoccupied with other things like responsive web design. I remember working on WordPress sites, and now we had brand guidelines and style guides, but they were very much at the back of our minds. They were like the last thing you'd put as a page on your website was a small style guide. And it was more for the client than it was for us. You don't want to let a client loose when you need some kind of guidelines of how they're going to do it. So they were tiny back then. And I remember picking up this book by Yesenia Perez-Cruz, and I started to figure out, what design systems actually are and trying to make sense of them. Because, I was in Sketch, creating so many symbols, it soon gets out of control, and I was trying to make sense of it. And back then, Brad Frost came out with the idea of atomic web design principles. So it was this idea of having things small to then build to something large. And I remember taking this all on board, and it was all great and all, but then you get back to your desk and you're just sat cool, this is an excellent idea, but I'm dealing with things every day, an unpredictable client. They want to change their whole web font. Excellent. How does that affect me and everything that I've just put together? We're trying to figure out consistency, and it's something that started really innocently, and which was very much needed. I think it's grown and grown, and I can't really describe it another way than this GIF you see here. Everything has changed today, and literally nothing has changed. Design systems are inherently much larger. They cover so many other things. And, we had brand guidelines, but now they include tone of voice. We share our design systems with our marketing team, with other people. They include tone of voice. Documentation has really taken off recently. And our monster has just grown and grown and grown. And like I say, we have tools now to actually manage design systems. We never had that before. It was never something we had. It's really grown. And we have the now concept of design tokens, and everything's really taken off in such a great way. So to round that off, I wanted to say, our guidelines have evolved into much larger, powerful systems. But they're extremely useful. They're worth the time putting together. As much as, we might love them or hate them, I think they exist for a reason. Just kind of a quick drink. So when I like to think about design systems and where they are today, I like to think about this GIF, which obviously is The Simpsons. But as you can tell, it's a constant cycle. You're feeding this design system, you're trying to communicate, and it's just constantly getting out of control. We make components, but then we have to document them, we have to adapt, We have to adapt very, very quickly. And I think that's for a number of reasons that I'd like to share with you all. And these are just personal reflections. You know, I could stand here and talk for weeks about everything that happens with design system. But I'm going to share just a few reasons and a few solutions of, you know, I think what we can do to help. And the first is unpredictability. Like I said, when I was working at my first agency outside Harrogate, you know, you work with clients that want to change their mind in a second, you know, you come across unforeseeable changes. And it's the nature of our life in tech, you know, we're constantly adapting and trying to please people and trying to work on projects. And like nothing is final. I think that's the beauty of what we work with. And, you know, you have your company growing, you know, your project will grow from the beginning to the end, and you'll hit lots of bumps on the way. And which makes maintaining a design system really, really hard. We recently went through a massive rebrand at Sketch. I don't know if you've seen it. Incredible how it came about as well, because it was such a simple idea. It was quite a wholesome idea. It was started with one of our designers just twiddling around with some gradients, and we ended up with an incredible redesign. So that really threw us for 10, because we hadn't really figured out our design system. It was there, but it gave us a chance to adapt and step back and really figure out what it was we were doing. So I think a game-changing mindset when we think about design systems is to think about them as a consumer product. And what I mean by that is, you know, our design system is going to be consumed by so many people. I think we can very easily silo ourselves off, head down, thinking about our symbols, thinking about our documentation, that we kind of forget that it's actually going to be shared with so many people. You know, like say our marketing team, our social media, anybody really touching this design system is consuming it and indirectly consuming it as well. You know, the most people that are going to be consuming it are your users who are going to be picking it up through that as well. So how do we deal with people consuming it, and how do we make that easier for them? And I think one example I can show you is just the idea of naming. You know, let's get on the same path at the beginning and understand our naming conventions. So pretend we have our brand colour. It's a big, exciting rebrand we've got on the way, and we want purple to change to green. You know, if we name our core brand colour as purple-light, you know, we're really setting ourselves up for some trouble if it changes. But if we change it, you know, it's going to be a jumbled mess, you know. You're going to have to go through, you're going to have to change it. Everyone's going to be confused. I know it seems like I'm patronising, and people mostly do this, but having something like brand primary, it really does set you up for that unpredictability. You know, it really helps, you know, when we're moving forward. And you can apply that to other things. You know, this is just an example of a brand colour, but you can apply that to your naming of your components as well. If you think of scale at the beginning, it's so much easier to change later on. And it really helps anyone understand picking up your design system that this, from the beginning, is your core brand primary colour. Think about your, I don't know, someone like your social media team, if they're trying to work on a new product and a new post, which colour do you think they're going to choose? If you have purple light, they're going to think, I don't know what that is. Brand primary actually gives meaning to its core colour. So you need to think really about human-friendly, scalable naming conventions, for everyone to be on board with this design system. You know, we shouldn't have like a jumbled numerical mess, because it just doesn't help anyone. You know, it shouldn't be unpredictable as well. Your structure should be flexible, resilient to change, and everyone that consumes it should be able to understand it. And if we communicate and collaborate when it comes to design systems and comes to naming as well, you know, whatever you choose to name your components and to name your conventions, if everyone's on the same page, the more people are going to understand that system. I think the worst thing you can do is, you know, work in silo, and people are gonna, you know, pick that up and not understand what's going on. So the more people the design system works for, I think the more people are gonna understand it. And if you communicate your ideal structure really early, you know, your search is gonna be much easier. You know, the worst thing you can do is be sat as a designer, as a developer, tapping away trying to find the latest problem to a UX problem, and you can't find what you're looking for. And that's all good and well, but unpredictability comes with all these things. So I think it's really good to have processes in place to handle edits and addition to your design system. It's a way to just tame the chaos. And I think even the most complex design systems can be changed, believe it or not, with a process in place. It might seem horrendously impossible when you're weighed down by so many variants, but I feel like as long as you have something in place, we can tame it. The ability to change it is there, it's in our hands. And we can start at any point having a process. At Sketch, we introduced a process quite recently, about 6 months ago, when we had our design system manager start. And we actually use GitHub. So our design system is called Prism. And we've got to this place where it's so easy to handle that it's a dream, actually. So we have our issues, and if we want to get started, we come across something when we're changing the Mac app, for example. I'll come and I'll say, oh, I want to add this to Prism. This component, this sidebar component, it actually needs edited. It needs to be edited. So you come in here, you start your issue, and then you put in what it's about. It goes to our design system manager, and it gets updated that way. So it might seem really simple, but it's so much of a game changer. It actually helps our process incredibly. And one thing, just easy actions in Slack. Having them at the top, especially when you're head down with work. You're solving the latest UX problem. You don't want to go traipsing through some documentation. Having some just quick actions at the top is just incredibly useful. And so you can go in here, you can start your new request. You can view the documentation really quickly and see like latest announcements, see everything you're working on. So I think another thing we come across, and predictability being one, but we come across the idea, how much is actually too much to put in your design system? And that's what I want to talk about now. So, we go through the process of creating a design system. And like I said, we're heads down usually. We're trying to share it with our team. And I know I can get carried away, especially making every variant under the sun and every scenario possible. But, when we're dealing with scale, we want to help confusion. So sometimes we manifest this in what appears to be flexibility by creating so many components and so much documentation that it might actually bog us down and get a bit out of hand. And I know we can't predict every scenario, but a design system, it should be relevant. And you don't actually need to include everything from the beginning of time, at least I found, because environment and context is different for everyone. Because your design system is going to be relevant to the people that are going to pick it up. So there's no use having components in there that are from a project about 5 years ago that no one's actually going to use. And there's nothing lost when something is in a different place. So, for example, in a document, some things could probably live in a document that we haven't thought of. To be able to complete a design system and make it relevant, we need to make sure that we're not polluting it with things that are up to date. And I think when we go through the process of making things relevant, we need to think about solutions as well. And we shouldn't stifle creativity as well, because I think the more components, the more things we document in our design system, the more we can feel like we haven't got room to wiggle around. It shouldn't stifle creativity. And it can also reduce adoption, because not everything needs to be in your system. Things can be one-offs. And polluting or bloating a system is probably more detrimental to everyone using it than it is just to keep things separate. And you can and you always will be able to add new things. So I think we don't need to worry if something is missing with our design system now. We can always pick it up later. I think we need to make time to evaluate the system's efficiency. So evaluate regularly, gather your opinions. It can be in the most informal way. You can chat to your colleagues on Slack, be like, how is this design system going? Are you picking it up all right? And you can even do surveys, look for metrics, maybe send out some surveys, like the Zero Height survey. That was excellent, and it definitely informed a lot of us, how we use design systems. And just maybe ask, is it working for them? Ask your engineers really, really nicely for some metrics. Is there any outdated components that we don't actually use in our system that can be evaluated and moved aside for efficiency? And one of the next problems, which is really close to my heart, is where we demonize detach. And I love a detach. So I know we've been candid and honest, but I love a detach because the core principle of using a design system is that you need to solve UX problems. At the end of the day, your users are going to be the ones that are consuming this, like I've said. So you need to be flexible and have that wiggle room to change and adapt when the latest problem comes along. But I understand why detach gets such a bad rep. You know, it's seen as a path into absolute chaos, seen as breaking the system. It really does promote inconsistency when it doesn't keep up to date. And like my lead, it makes me die on the inside every time I press that detach button. So, when we're deviating against a system like this, it's not because we want to. You can detach things because there's genuine reasons of why nothing's working. And I think you need to evaluate that. We can't demonize something that's ultimately going to lead to us creating a better system. So it's really, really good to remember that a design system is literally never complete. If we go back to the idea of unpredictability, the process is constant. It's a constant cycle. I think we really need to embrace that idea of, everything's going to change and nothing is final, and we're going to be at this for a while and nothing is ever complete. So this is just a genuine idea of like the cycle of a design system. You design a solution, add in any components, and add its code base, and everything goes on and on. It's a constant life cycle, like an endless loop. Think of like back to that Homer gif. You're constantly feeding it, you're constantly getting feedback, and you're constantly going round and round. The work is literally never finished. But your design system, it shouldn't stifle creativity. And I know there's so much talk about, like our design systems need it, they stifle creativity. And I think, it's a designer's job and our whole team's job to provide the best experience for our users. And we also need to be creative as well in getting to those solutions. So if we have a design system that's open to change and open to this change and creation as well, we can then produce the best possible one we possibly can. And I'd say, we can design once with something, with our components. Try designing once. If it doesn't work, my favorite thing is try without, because sometimes you can find solutions in change as well. And obviously I'm not saying go ahead and touch literally everything that you've put together in your design system. That would be very, very wrong of me. But you have to use it as a learning opportunity, I feel, because, we need to look at the positives. Things are detached for a reason, right? There's no, we need to understand it, Use it as an opportunity to ask questions. Maybe ask, like, why was it detached? Can we make our guidelines a bit easier? Did someone fumble or not understand, what this component did, or what our documentation is trying to say? And maybe it's actually, do you need a whole new component? Do you need a whole new variant? Do we need something that's completely different? So I think we need to forget that don't forget to circle back, and apply learnings and adapt to them. Because in order to keep our principles in check, we shouldn't lose that core value of what we're trying to create. And, in order to break things, you sometimes need to fix them again. And this was actually a quote from Pitch Perfect 2, which I only figured out after I'd said it, which I'm very happy about. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's something to remember when we're down in the weeds working with design systems. Is we can break them as much as possible, but we can bring them back together in the best possible ways, especially when we have our users in mind. I think my last problem as well that we come about with design systems is the out of sync code base. And I feel like we've all been there, right? Our code base is not in sync with what our designers are tapping away and creating. We're here making the best possible system we can possibly think of. And the engineers are just like, please no more, I can't do it. But these can be like subtle differences, Your designers could be like pushing some padding, but the engineering team isn't picking it up. And, it's little things, spacing as well, tiny things that can then, when you escalate and you create that unpredictability and you add more things, it gets out of control really quickly, and those things can really escalate. So if we go back to our life cycle of our design system, I think I can really identify, at what point that happens. And I think it's at these 2 points, we're setting our use cases, we're adding our components, and then we add it to the code base. And if something's added, quite a bit different, subtly, like I say, changes, then when we come around to iterating that component, because remember, our design system is never complete, we're always going to come up with changes, we're going to be left even more out of sync. So this is where design tokens comes in. And I say introducing, design tokens isn't a new concept by any chance, but I feel like they're really starting to take off. And I know it's like a buzzword these days, but it's not as complex as they think it is. I think it is, because I worked with WordPress sites and I have a fear of code. So when I look at tokens and generally anything, I get sweats. But it's an exciting progression in design systems, I think, and the future looks pretty bright. And tokens connect design and engineering. They're on agreed standardized spec, so it's actually impossible for them to fall out of sync. And I've talked to Luke about this from Zero Height a few times, what actually is a source of truth. And once you have tokens in place, that can be the source of truth. And I'm going to show you what Sketch have implemented right now. And it's in our live system, and it's great. And I actually had the pleasure of working on it. It's color tokens. So, hope this will work. I'm going to demo this. It's a recording video. So I'm going to have to look. So we're in the Sketch, and it's in our web app, and we have our core brand colors. So pink, lilac, and red. What happens when I export color token? So I'm left with this window, and ignore our drop down, but we can see in CSS, we can see this JSON file. What we want to focus on is this link. So if I copy this link, and then I head over to my very, very, very simple code base, and I pop it in here, import it, and we click save. We can see our colors have loaded in. It's pretty cool. But what happens when I change my colors? So I'm going to go back to the Mac app. I'm going to change, I think, my red. So our core brand colors change. We now want a blue for some unknown reason. And when we do that and click save again, you'll see that we have an update created. That's going to push to the web app. And you'll see in the sidebar that we have a new version. So our new version has been created. Click on that. It's now changed to blue. So when I go back over into my web page, hopefully it should have changed too. There you go. So, is it going to work? So color tokens. So that was a very, very simple preview of how color tokens can work. But it's really exciting to see something like that join code and design together. We can have one source of truth finally. So this is generally just the beginning, I think, with design tokens. And I don't want to tell everyone to, push to production. When your designer is changing your core brand color and then pushing it to a live site. I'm not saying do that. But I want any viable practice will have something in place, to stop that. But the concept is there to however you guys want to use it. So I think it's a super exciting progression in design systems. We're getting somewhere finally, and the future, it seems really bright. And I, for one, I'm just really excited to see where we go with it. So I just want to give a quick recap on what we've chatted about, because I know I've been chewing your ear off with literally everything. So to recap, your design system is a consumer product. Please try not working silo. Include as many people as you can with your design system. The more people it works for, the more people is going to consume it and going to actually have a very usable experience designing with it. And use human-friendly, scalable naming conventions. Like I say, people are consuming this, they're going to want to understand how it works. And the best way to do that is to not put -2/flight or everything, make it actually readable to a human. And communicate, collaborate, and think about processes. I'm sure many of you have processes in place for your design system, but it's a great way to handle chaos and to really tame that beast. And make time to evaluate efficiency. we can put things in from the beginning of time, but then we should just evaluate if it's efficient. Is our design system going to work for people? And use detaching as a learning opportunity. Let's not scold our designer because they did it. Try and understand the reason behind their detaching so we can move forward and create the best system for everyone. And finally, embrace design tokens because they are going to be game changers, and I think we're all going to be better off for them in the end. So I just want to leave this talk by saying that, our design system can be horrendously intimidating and we can feel bogged down and it's a complete mess sometimes. But even the biggest of design systems can be tamed, and if we see them in a different light, they can be our friends. And I think they are here to stay, and they're necessary. As you said, we've gone back in time and figured out the life cycle. They are going to be here for a long time, and I think we should embrace them and make them our friend. So on that note, thank you so much for listening, and have the rest of your day ahead of you. And thank you so much. Thank you to everyone online. Thank you.